Part number 5, brakes. F1 22. How do they work? Let's get into it. It's probably going to be the simplest thing, but it's also the most underrated thing that you can ever imagine in the game. Brake bias can be a little bit useful in some conditions. Let's say you have rear tire wear and whatnot and all that stuff. How do you manage your brake bias? When do you increase your brake bias? How does it work? Let's get into that real quick. So let's start off with the obvious brake pressure. Brake pressure, as you can see in the game, we can go from as low as 50%, which means when you hit the brakes, only 50% of the braking force of the brake disc is applied. Whereas if you go up to 100%, that means when you hit the brakes, maximum amount of braking pressure can be applied by the brake disc or brake drums or whatever onto the tires. So what do you want in this game? Like any other games and like in real life, even in sim racing, you want 100% brake bias, brake pressure. Correction there. You want the maximum amount of brake pressure so that you get quickest stopping power, most amount of stopping power, so that you can stop your car as quick as possible. So do you want to reduce it in the rain? And so not exactly, because in the rain you will not be even braking at a full 100%. You will not be going 100% down on your throttle, on your brake pedal, to say at the very least. In the dries, of course, when you head into a heavy braking zone, for example here in Monza in turn 1, we'll do a short demonstration later. When you hit the brakes 100%, and then when you have 100% brake pressure in your setup, you will get the maximum amount of grip, maximum amount of braking power, the stopping power from your tires. What happens if you reduce it? Well, that means it's going to take longer to stop your car, but it also reduces the chance of locking up. Locking up is not really existent in this game. It's much easier to brake this year compared to the previous years of games. So always recommend running at 100% brake pressure for the wets, or for the dries or intermediates. 100% work always the best. The only thing is brake pressure cannot be adjusted during park ferme. Even between sessions it cannot be adjusted. So once you lock it in, say you accidentally go in with a 90% brake pressure, yeah, unfortunate for you, you're going to be having a bit less braking power in the race, unless you accidentally hit with 90% brake pressure into a rainy race and whatnot. You might find it actually a little bit more useful, so keep that in mind. Now, brake bias, what does it do? Well, let's bring back our good old track and car demo thingy. We have our old phone and a remote. So here we have the track, here we have the car. We don't really need the track today, so we just need the car here. Now this is your car, the front of your car. All right, this is the front, and then this is the rear of your car. So what's gonna happen is, as you head into a corner, you apply the brakes. So if it's 50% brake bias, what that means is 50% of the force is applied to the front, 50% of the braking power is applied to the rears. That means it's a 50-50 distribution of brake power to the front and the rear. What this does is it allows the rear of your car to move a bit more under braking. So if you're going into a very high speed corner, you want the car to be turning in, so you want a bit more rearwards brake bias, so as low as it goes, so that you get a bit more turn in. The car turns a bit more, the rear of your car is slowed down a little bit compared to the front, so that you can turn in a bit, bring more speed into the corner. Into heavy braking zones, here's where it differs a little bit in real life. Well, like in real life, you usually see drivers going up to 57, 58, 56%, 55 even. At the launch of this game it was like that, but quickly people found out that if you have a very high very low brake bias, you can just drift the car around in slow corners and gain more time rather than driving it in the proper way. So what Curtis did, as usual, made 50% the new 55%, in sort of that way. So if you're running 50% now, it's sort of like running 55, 56 before before patch 106, basically at launch. So running 50% brake bias is not exactly harmful. It just allows you to brake and allow the rear to move a little bit more, slow down a bit more, so that you can carry a bit more speed. The rear is a bit more slowed down, so you can carry more cornering ability. You know, you can turn your car more during the corners. If you have your brake bias slightly forward, say, you know, like in Monza Turn 1, sometimes I like to use in these heavy braking zones 51 or 52, just so it helps me to give a bit more braking force to the front. So what that happens, that means, you know, when I'm going into a heavy braking zone like turn 1, I make sure that the front is more stable. There's more force on the front is going to be more stable, but this will increase the chance of locking up if you stay on the brakes for too long. So you have to trail brake, let off the brakes as you start turning in and going into a corner. So as you turn in, the more you turn in into a corner, the more you have to lift off the brakes. So that's trail braking in a way. Now setting up, it's not that difficult for this game. 100% brake pressure is the way you want to go. 50% brake bias is the way you want to go for every track, every condition. Now there are some specific conditions where you may want to change your brake bias from you know, lap to lap, maybe, or corner to corner. For example, if it's an uphill braking zone, Kota turn 1, Austria turn 1, it's uphill. Austria turn 3 as well, it's uphill. It is somewhat beneficial to raise your brake bias forward, because as you go uphill, naturally more weight is focused on the rear of the car. So what you want to do is you want to push more braking force to the front by virtue of the brake bias, so that you kind of get a similar effect as if you were on a flat track. So 51, 52, especially on these very high braking zones like Kota turn 1, Austria turn 1, and Austria turn 3, they kind of help to make sure your car doesn't oversteer when you throw the car into the apex. So that's one tip. And let's say in races where there's a lot of rear tire wear, for good example would be Canada, Baku, Japan, even to some extent. Japan last corner, the Casio triangle, the Casio chicane, they call it. So it's also useful to raise your brake bias over there, so that you know, you are braking heavy and quickly into a corner, you do not lose the rear end, so the front of your car is more stable. Now if you have a lot of rear tire wear, you want to make sure in the race you progressively increase your brake bias, let's say to 51 or 52, so that, you know, you apply less force on the brakes on the rear tires, so that saves your rear tires a bit more. It reduces the sliding that is generated from the tires when you're going through corners, and that's also going to help you with, you know, prolonging your tire life, so maybe better lap times overall. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. So that's how you set up your car in F1 22 for the brakes. 100% brake pressure, it's all the thing that you need. 50% brake bias is applicable in all conditions, all tracks, all the time. Some exceptions, if you want to try it out, is always uphill corners braking. If it's a heavy uphill braking, like turn 1 Kota, turn 1 Austria, turn 3 Austria, which are uphill braking zones, you can try 51. This will help to keep your car a bit more stable when you want to go into a corner. And let's say you know, your rear tire wear is so much higher than the front, not because of your driving, but just the nature of the circuit itself. It is useful as the stint goes on to push the brake bias forward. Baku, very prominent for having a lot more rear tire wear than the front, so it is somewhat useful in the races to, you know, sometimes to go even up to 55, 54. You don't see it on some esport drivers POV, but you know, this is something a lot of the other top drivers that you do that I've picked up. So brake bias definitely helps to preserve the rear tires in traction heavy zones. So yeah, that's about it. Now let's take a look at how, like, why you need to be running 50% 100% brake pressure all the way. Let's just go into turn 1 Monza and see how difficult will it get to brake. Even at the end, at the back straight here, we can see how long will it take to brake. Right, so yeah, I'm not running ABS, of course, so I'm just gonna go in full brakes, and then you can see what's happening over there. Let's try that again and see how long does it take to, you know, sort of slow down the car. Maybe let's say this green patch here, you know, like maybe at full stop right around this part of the track. Let's see if we can get a full stop of the car once we have our brake pressure up to 100. So let's quickly go back into the pits, and let's take a look at our setup here, and let's go up to 100%, and let's try this out. Again, these things doesn't matter if you have ABS or no ABS. Your driving style will matter at the end of the day. There you go. So we're kind of a little bit closer to the track than we were before. So yeah, brake pressure definitely helps to stop your car much quicker than you need to. And maybe let's try it at Monza turn 1 here. Let's see how does it really work, 100% versus 50%. So we'll start to brake at 100-meter board. That's where normally you brake for Monza. Just for reference now, we'll start to brake at 150 and see where do we stop. Right, we arrive to full stop at right around here. Okay, so I roughly know how much where I am based on the peripherals. So let's repeat this just to get another consistent result. Let's brake at 150 again. Exactly the same. Alright, so that's as close as you can get to stopping at the same point on the track. So the results are going to be the same because we are in time trial. There's no tire wear involved. In a real race condition, tire wear will kick in, and you will start to notice your braking distance will start to increase, get longer. And if you have medium tires and hard tires, your braking distance is going to be even slightly longer, maybe 2 or 3 meters more, 5 meters more in some cases. And if you're following someone in the slipstream with DRS, you will definitely have to brake a little bit earlier so that you don't run into the back of them. Monza turn 1 being a very famous place for such collisions. Now let's see at 50%, how long does it take for us to stop the car when we hit 150 meters at the end of turn 1. Let's brake at 150. Yeah, as you can see, it's so much smoother. It doesn't lock up initially, because we have less brake pressure applied on the tires, so it's gonna take longer to brake, but at the same time it's less chance of locking up. So let's do that again. I can roughly see where we are on the track here, so let's just repeat this for one or two more times. We'll have to do it again. We stopped a little too long on the track. So yeah, 50%, that's not what you want to be running. You are essentially giving away lap time here. So let's try to do that again, and then I'll show you, how much it really affects you if you try to take a normal corner normally in turn 1 here. Now Monza, why is it the best place to test this out? Because low downforce, it gives you minimal grip from the aero. So I'm trying to brake earlier here. I broke a little bit earlier than the 50-meter mark and 150 mark, but I still didn't reach the same braking point as I did when I had full braking pressure on. So let's try this again. Yeah, it takes so much longer to brake, and let's try to take turn 1 normally like I would for a hot lap or a race lap and see. Yeah, this car wasn't just not stopping at all. You can know the car is not gonna stop. It's carrying too much speed into the corner. So let's just see that again, just for consistency again. Yeah, I'll have to brake like so much earlier, around 150 and all. Now let's head into turn 4 where it's also another heavy braking zone. So you may notice that I'll have to brake earlier in order to make the corner. Normally you brake around 75-80 meters around here, but let's try much earlier. Yeah, it works here. Alright, let's try to brake at the normal point, like 100 meters and so. car just doesn't want to stop. Let's go again. One last time and we'll end it here. Okay, it was not as bad as I thought. Not as bad as I thought. You could brake, but you could trail brake a lot more with that, but it's not ideal at all. You can't stop. Ideally, I'm gonna be stopping. I'm starting to stop around here. As soon as I pass the orange barrier, that's why I'm braking. But ideally, as soon as I pass the 100, that's where I'll be hitting the brakes. So it does affect you more, you know, in tracks like this where you don't have much downforce. So yeah, that's the conclusion on brakes in F1 22. Summary is run maximum brake pressure, which is 100%, run minimum brake bias, which is 50%, 51 or a little higher will be useful for uphill heavy braking zones like Kota turn 1, Austria turn 1, or even flat heavy braking zones like Monza turn 1, Bahrain turn 1. All these places 51% will help your car to be a little bit more stable into the braking zone. And if you're trying to outbrake someone by diving down the inside, this will help your car to slow down a little bit quicker on the fronts and make sure that your rears doesn't slide. So yeah, and you have heavy tire wear on the rear. You can always push the brake bias forward to 52, 53. In some places like Baku, you can even go up to 55 when you're towards the end of your stint. So that really helps with the rear tire management. Yeah, there you go. And that's about it. Next one, part number 6, will be about tire pressures, and we will see you very, very shortly. Take care. Bye bye.